Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Exit Light, and this is another in my series of true unsolved murder cases. This particular case is one that I find especially creepy and sad. After I tell you the story, I'll highlight the parts that I have a hard time getting out of my mind. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders, also known as Murder Barn. It started with a string of inexplicable occurrences, footprints in the snow coming from the dark woods to the back door of the home, but not leading back, creaking and footsteps in the attic, an unfamiliar newspaper left in the kitchen, house keys went missing, and someone tried to break the lock on the tool shed. None of this was reported to the police prior to the attack. Hinterkaifeck was a small farmstead situated between the Bavarian towns of Ingolstadt and Schrobenhausen, approximately 43 miles north of Munich. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, the 6 inhabitants of the farm were brutally murdered with a mattock, which is a tool similar to a pickaxe. Their murders remain unsolved. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had left the farm, claiming that it was haunted. She was hearing those mysterious footprints in the attic. And on a chilly night in 1922, Andreas Gruber, who was 63, his wife, Kazilia, who was 72, their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, who was 35, and Victoria's children, Kazilia, 7 years old, Joseph, 2, and the new maid, Maria Baumgartner, who was 44, were brutally attacked on the ranch. The new maid, Maria, had only arrived on the farm that day, and she was killed just hours later. The Hinterkaifeck murders shook the public, both because of the brutality and the bizarre circumstances surrounding the homicides. Exactly what happened on that Friday evening cannot be said for certain. It is believed that the older couple, and then their daughter, and then her daughter Kazilia, were all lured into the barn one by one, where they were brutally murdered. The perpetrator then went into the house where they killed 2-year-old Joseph, who was sleeping in his crib in his mother's bedroom, and the maid Maria, who was in her bedroom. The bodies were discovered until the following Tuesday, after Kazilia had failed to show up for school. Also, the postman had noticed that the mail from the previous Saturday was still where he had left it. Inspector George Reingruber and his colleagues from the Munich Police Department investigated the killings. More than 100 suspects had been questioned throughout the years, with the most recent questioning taking place in 1986. None of the questioning yielded any results. The day after the discovery of the bodies, court physician Johann Baptist Amüller performed the autopsies in the barn. It was established then that a mattock was most likely the murder weapon. Also, sadly, evidence showed that the younger Kazilia had been alive for several hours after she was assaulted, and in that time she had torn her hair out in tufts while she was lying bloodied in the straw next to the bodies of her grandparents and her mother. The skulls of the corpses were sent to Munich, where clairvoyants examined them to no avail. The police first suspected the motive to be robbery, and they interrogated traveling craftsmen, vagrants, and several inhabitants from the surrounding villages. However, this theory was abandoned when a very large amount of money was found inside the house. Creepier still, it is believed that the perpetrator remained at the farm for several days. Why? Well, because someone had fed the cattle, taken care of the farm, and eaten the food in the kitchen. The death of Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had been reportedly killed in the French trenches in World War I, was even called into question, as his body had never been found. However, most of his fellow soldiers reported seeing him die, and the police believed their reports. Another oddity, 2-year-old Joseph was rumored to be the son of Victoria and her father, Andreas, who had a relationship that was well documented in court and known about in the village. A neighboring farmer named Lorenz Schlittenbauer publicly claimed to be Joseph's father and paid alimony to Victoria and Andreas. Shortly before the murders, Victoria was preparing to sue Schlittenbauer, who by then had a wife and baby, for alimony. Schlittenbauer was part of the original search party that found the corpses, and he disturbed the bodies before the police could arrive. The police questioned him extensively, but were unable to find concrete evidence linking him to the crime. In 2007, the students of the police academy in Fürstenfeldbruck examined the case using modern criminal investigation techniques. They concluded that it is impossible to definitively solve this crime after so much time has passed. The primitive investigation techniques available at the time of the murders yielded little evidence, and in the decades since the murders, evidence has been lost and suspects have since died. Despite these setbacks, the students did establish a prime suspect, but they refused to name a suspect out of respect for still living relatives. The 6 victims are buried in Veldhofen, where there is a memorial in the graveyard. The skulls were never returned from Munich after having been lost in the chaos of World War II. The farm was demolished a year after the attacks. Close to where the farm was located, there is now a shrine. The parts of this story that are particularly creepy to me are 1. The idea of the silent, lone footsteps coming out of the forest and leading up to the back door sends a chill down my back. The 2nd, that the 7-year-old, Kazilia, had to lay there next to the bodies of her grandparents and her mother, so traumatized, so terrified, that the child tore her own hair from her head. And lastly, that this crime feels to me to be a crime of passion, considering that the person seems to have cared about the farm and the animals and took time to live there after the murders. Thank you for coming and for listening to this story. If you like my channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to be notified of new material when I update it, please click that bell. If you'd like to leave a comment, I would appreciate that very much. If you would like to tell me the parts of the story that bother you the most, or what your opinion is of the story, who you think the suspect might be, please leave that down there. I'd love it. Please share this channel with people you know that like true, unsolved murder cases, and also creepypasta. I write them myself, and narrate them. And if you also like true paranormal activity stories, I do those as well. My own experiences, and I have guests come and tell their experiences. Thank you.